This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to convene the Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 North Haven Fire Commission meeting to order. And if everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask for approval of minutes of the regular Board of Fire Commission meeting held on December 19th, 2023.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd also like to ask for approval of the special meeting held on January 4th, 2024.
So moved. Oop, go ahead.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The Chief's report.
Good evening. The numbers I'm going to give you are going to cover a longer period of time than usual because we did not have a regular January meeting. And so our numbers from December 19th until yesterday are as follows. 24 different occasions in which we had to provide ALS intercept to the hospital, 35 incident responses to the highway, 244 incidents in which we were able to dispatch just Nelson ambulance. It did not require a response from the fire department. 381 incidents occurring at the same time, which is about 44% of all the incidents that have occurred since that period of our last meeting. As we stand right now, in 2023, we're at 631 alarms. Here we are in 2024, we're at 655 alarms. That covers the incident response. Regarding the budget, we're going to go through period 7, which would be the close of January. And so last fiscal year, we were at 60.2. This fiscal year, we're at 59%. I have revenue through period 6, which brings us through the end of the calendar year. Revenue for fire fees at that time was just over $252,000, and revenue for ALS billing was just over $55,000. We've had a couple of staffing shortages that have impacted the budget as well, which is worth bringing to the attention of the commission. We had a very brief time in which we were full capacity in terms of at least 10 per shift, but that did not last very long. We had one member that went out on sick leave January 2nd, and we expect that member to stay on sick leave through June of 2024. And we had one member who was out for about a 30-day period and has since returned, went out around that same time, January 2nd. So we continue to monitor those. Obviously, prolonged sick leave and injury leave is something that we can't entirely budget for, and so we're keeping an eye on those things as well. Regarding the fire marshal's office, so I'm going to reflect back on 2 different packets that you were provided. One was in anticipation of the January meeting. So you were provided that when we thought we were going to have a meeting, and so that covered the December 2023 fire marshal report. Nothing of particular interest there. About 10 fires or so that were investigated, 2 investigations of which we had to call out the investigators to the scene for. 4 plan reviews, 55 permits. That's about normal for it being right in the middle of December in the dead of winter. 62 public record requests and 52 different inquiries. That covered the December time period. And when you look at the packets you were provided the other day, which covers January of 2024, we called the investigators out to the scene on 1 occasion in that month. 23 public record requests, 50 inquiries. Plan reviews were 12, permits were 47. 75 different inspections occurred that month. And we had same thing, about a dozen fires or so that were investigated, and we had 1 incident in which we pursued an arrest warrant for, and that individual has since been charged, and we're waiting on an arraignment date. That's what I have for the fire marshal's office. I don't have anything further to report at this time. A few things for executive session, and that concludes my report.
Just,
Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
yeah, I just had a couple of questions on the inspections, just to know what are the above ceiling Knox box, tank removal, what are those?
So all different inspections. So if you look at the ceiling above us, it's a drop ceiling. So before we can allow any kind of contractor to start covering the ceiling and covering up the electrical and the piping and roof penetrations, firewall penetrations, we need to go back and do an inspection before they cover it. And a drop ceiling, not too big of a deal. It's still a formality, but in a drywall ceiling, that's a much more imperative that we get there. Knox blocks are the safe that's outside a lot of the commercial buildings and industrial buildings in town. We make sure that that key still works the premise so that we can get in the case of an emergency and we're not breaking the door. And what was the third question?
There's tank removal and then hydrostatic test.
So hydrostatic test could be something like gas or sprinkler pipes, making sure that it's going to hold the water supply or it's going to hold the gas. And tanks there are a lot of underground tanks in this town. For the most part, they're residential, and they require an inspection by the fire marshal's office when they are removed.
Okay, so these inspections are actually, like, when you're talking about looking above the ceiling, that's
During
beyond, like,
during
there's-
construction,
Okay, like the building department looks at them, but the fire department also does.
different
Okay.
codes. Yep. So the above ceiling is specific to remodel or new construction. It's not your typical inspections that you do.
Okay,
Any other questions of the chief?
I think I might have had a couple around the budget.
Yeah.
Just double check and see. So the total overtime and the total contractual replacement, that doesn't look like it's in such bad shape right now, right?
Nope. Overtime's gonna have gone up a little bit because we just called in some staff for this last weather. Because of there's a few reasons why we do it, but we did call some staff in for this last weather. And contractual, no, we're doing the best we can to kind of keep it at bay. There's not a lot we can do to control it. But seeing as though you are bringing it up, I want to provide this to you, because I was going to talk about it at some point anyways. During the workshop, I was asked by a finance member about savings that we've incurred for staffing shifts with 11 and keeping a minimum at 10. So it's not as easy to run this as you would think, because there's no place we can go to get this data. This is all something we have to pull manually. And so the timeline goes like this. And so we were authorized for 11 firefighters on 2 shifts as of January 1st of 2023. Okay, so it was a mid-fiscal year hire, as it was for all the hires prior to that when we were staffing Monte Luis. And so the funding did not become available until January 1st, 2023 to be able to put together the 11 staff. The 2 firefighters that we hired started recruit school on February 14th. The one of the 2, as this commissioner is aware of, we separated employment with during recruit school, and so we only had 1 that successfully graduated. And so you'll see below, this happened to be Division 1. That firefighter was assigned as an 11th firefighter to Division 1, and you can see the savings that it captured. And so you can see, if you do the math here, it's every 4 days, you can see on every day except for 2 occurrences, there was an overtime savings. So if you look at, it was an 8-month period, because it brings us through current day. If you look at an 8-month period, it was a $77,000 savings. We projected 90 per division per year. And so in 8 months, we captured $77,000. We're going to exceed the projection. The second shift that was going to have 11 firefighters assigned, because we separated employment with 1 recruit in the fire school, did not have the 11th firefighter assigned right away. We weren't able to put that 11th firefighter on shift until May 31st. We were fortunate to find somebody that we could start right away because of the credentials that they brought to us. And so you can see on Division 3, on the third page, is when that shift started to have 11 firefighters assigned, and you can see the savings that was captured. Unfortunately, it only brings us through August 23rd, because on August 24th, firefighter D. Simone passed away, and that was one of those firefighters on that shift. And so we have not had a very long period of time that we can capture any savings. But you can see on the one shift that we have continued to carry it through, there's savings almost every shift. And so hopefully that answers the question of the board, and I think it proves the point that we were trying to prove all along.
And are they getting a copy of this?
A copy was provided to the chairman of the Board of Finance, which is who I communicate with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this manual calculation, Chief, and it absolutely substantiates what your projection was, and even surpasses it. We were thinking with the 11th person, we would be looking at about 90,000, if I'm not mistaken. So in 8 months, it's 77.5, and that's quite an accomplishment.
Couple other quick budget questions. Total longevity, does that get paid out throughout the year?
So once a year, so that should be done.
Okay. And the total EMT, same thing?
Normally, but there was a contract agreed to recently, and there was an additional stipend that was added on to the contract, and there was that funding for that stipend came out of the EMT line, and I'm going to be talking to the director of finance to find out why it was pulled from that line and it wasn't pulled elsewhere from the budget for contractual obligations.
Okay.
Because that's just gonna take that line and now inflate my line when we hadn't budgeted for it.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for bringing that forward.
You don't see it yet, because it was paid out this past month, but next month you'll see there's quite an overage now on that. line.
Okay, okay. And then total EMT training, that's another one that's close to, is that a one-time a year?
It's not, that's ongoing, but that should be wrapping up here pretty soon. Most of the paramedics are on a March cycle. Every March is when renewals come up, and so for the most part, you'll find that that line has gonna pretty much has paid itself out.
Okay. Total maintenance, total vehicle maintenance and repair.
Yep, that's over.
Yep.
Yep, so, and one of the reasons that's over is because we continue to pay $3,000 a month to lease a fire engine. It's coming out of that line, and we have an old fleet. And until we have the 2 new engines that arrive in May, that line is going to continue to be over. And so right now, I believe it's about $25,000 over. I would expect it to go even higher than that.
Okay. And then the hydrants?
Mhm.
The total hydrant, are the hydrants, the maintenance of the hydrant or the replacement of the hydrants? I know there was discussion about something being moved to Public Works. I don't know if that ever happened.
Yeah, so that wouldn't have been for this. This is hydrants, and so hydrants are for lack of better words, hit or miss. No pun intended with that. And so when we have hydrants that are struck by vehicles and we
It's the
can't attribute it
replacement.
to an accident and recover anything from insurance, we eat the cost to repair the hydrant.
Okay,
The other thing that started to occur is the new RMS system that we converted to, that First Due system, where we're tracking the hydrants and actually tracking that we're checking them. We found several hydrants that were malfunctioning, that when we find that they're malfunctioning, we have to get them repaired.
okay. That might be my last one. Nope, sorry. Total uniforms and cleaning. Is that new uniforms or just the cleaning part of it, or?
I don't know which line that you're referring to in that one, but that should be paid out by now.
Okay. So that's done, whatever's,
Yeah, what line number is that? The number itself.
where do I see the number? What page? It's on page 5, the top, top
Yeah, I
one.
don't have this, well, I can pull the same report up you have. I printed a detailed version so I can grab it. Yeah, 8505, uniforms and cleaning.
Might be this, 0128555.
Yeah, so that was bid for uniforms that just went out, and that shouldn't really be impacted any further.
Okay. And then the last one, total paramedics?
What's the line? What page are you looking at on your report?
Page 5, and I think it's 01285674. No, that's the CAD, right? Volunteer associations. Paramedic, oh, no, 01285657. Total paramedic QM.
That's the second one from the bottom.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what it is, right? I thought so. So that is going to appear over budget because there was no line for it in this fiscal year, and that is a change in practice that the Director of Finance decided to do mid-fiscal year without a line associated to it. And so what was happening was any of the revenue that we were collecting was being deducted from the revenue line, and he changed the way that we were doing that and needs it pulled from an expense line. Well, there's no expense line in the fiscal year that we're in right now, and so there was nothing budgeted for it.
Okay, and what's included in this?
That is the actual billing for the EMS billing that we do.
Okay,
it's-
so
it's a-
they're basically, eventually, this is gonna be more like a revenue item in the middle of?
It's basically the percentage that we owe the billing company for doing our billing.
Okay. Okay,
And we always paid it. It was just reduced from what we report for the revenue, and I'm told it cannot be done that way any longer.
so essentially, they're gonna give us an expense for what is used to bill for paramedics, but they're not gonna show that there's revenue that actually relates to
That
that.
offsets it. All we should ever show is expense in the budget.
Okay. It's my big pet peeve.
Yep.
Okay, I'm done with that.
Well, the doctor fees, what is that for now? I know that we had some extensive conversation about physicals for firefighters and maintaining their health and so on and so forth.
Yep.
So, I see we've already spent 10.4% of the budget. So what is that actually being used for?
So that is
It's on page 6.
Yep, it's physician fees that we pay to Yale Occupational Health. When we had 80, 90 volunteers, we would use all that money, but we don't have that number of volunteers anymore, and so we're not going through that level of expense. That money should stay exactly where it is because we continue to be hopeful that we can reach an agreement with the labor union to initiate more stringent physicals, but that has not been successful so far.
So we don't have a line item for that?
That would be the line item.
That would be the line item.
That's why we're trying to keep that number right where it is, whether it's spent or not. So in other words, we have the funding put aside for the more stringent physicals if we can ever reach an agreement.
Right. Any other questions regarding the budget or the chief's report? There are none, we'll move on to correspondence. Chief, have you received any correspondence?
Just a couple of cards. I always try to bring up the cards outside of the normal day-to-day correspondence. These are just thank you cards from some residents related to incidents that we responded to. This is thank you for donations that we provided to the Ronald McDonald House. You're welcome to take a look at those. Other than the day-to-day correspondence and those, I have nothing further for correspondence.
Any commissioners receive any correspondence?
I didn't receive correspondence, but I did receive a phone call. I'm going to pass those. Mary Jane, there's a handout for you and Pat. In working with the overhaul of the website, I looked at the new patch logo, and I wanted to find out more about it because the phone call I received is about the logo on the website. And I noted that back in April of 2022, there was a discussion about changing it. And that there was a firefighter that helped with the design, and that some literature regarding the meaning of the patch was, I think, distributed. I'm not certain, but I was hoping you could tell me, Chief, what the significance is, and then I'll tell you what my question is.
I could, but I don't have that in front of me right now. There was an email and some correspondence that was sent to the commission at that time for the story that led to that, the design. I can give you briefly, there was a survey that was sent out to all the members. If you remember, the basis of this was getting away from the patch, which could have been considered to be offensive to some.
Yes.
And so this was the design that a member had come up with, and we asked about different historical items in North Haven that meant something to the staff and that we could incorporate into the patch. And we identified some core values as well, so that we can incorporate our core values into our patch. What I can tell you is that patch has become basically our station, or our department logo, if you will. That's going to go on all of our apparatus. But the patch itself has since gone under a few other renditions, and the reason for that is because that symbol is a Maltese cross. It's reminiscent of a firefighter. So if you know anything about the fire service, you know how much the Maltese cross means to the fire service. While that was great, the problem is when you try taking that Maltese cross and putting it on a shirt that covered the patch that was there previously, unfortunately, depending on the age of the shirt, there was an outline that was visible. And so we went back and incorporated many aspects of that design still into a patch that's only just been recently finalized in the last few weeks, which incorporates most of that, but onto a patch that covers our existing patch so that it fits better on the hundreds of uniform shirts and uniforms that are out there.
Thank you. The question that was asked was, why is there a rifle on the patch?
Sure. So there are two gun manufacturers that have significant historical context in North Haven. That's why.
Okay. And the feather, is that for fishing?
Feather is specific to the Mono East Indians.
Ah, okay. So I can tell the person that called the reason for the gun.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, and if you look at the background is brick. These are all things that are specific to the very fabric of North Haven in our history.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The picture there is the Quinnipiac, with the railroad going through the Quinnipiac River and Sleeping Giant in the background. I mean, they all have significance to what North Haven is.
So there's recreation and industry represented in this patch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One other quick question, the logo that's on the stationery and things like that, will that eventually
It'll
switch
eventually
over?
get changed.
Okay.
Yeah. We knew pretty early on when we started to roll this patch out, we realized, and this doesn't happen until you don't. We've never revised our patch. That was part of the reason why we had to do it, because it's never been revised. And as much as we want to try to go to a different design, it was just going to be too expensive and too much work to take that and overlay it from everything else. Mm-hmm. And so now that we've settled on the two, you'll start seeing some stationery and so forth come out. We had to kind of hit the pause button for a little while.
Okay.
So is the patch logo on the website the final version?
I will check and see. If I don't believe so, that is on the website, obviously, but the newer version, I don't know that it is, and part of that is because we're waiting. So when you have graphics done, you wait for what's called a vector image, and so it's something specific that can be put onto websites and can be kind of digitized. Mm-hmm. So we're waiting for that to be a clean enough image where we can put it out there. Okay. And so if that's not here yet, it should be here very soon.
Would you anticipate any difficulties switching that logo on the website?
I wouldn't, but I'm
Not
sure
you personally,
the
but-
consultant should be able to do it
Okay.
because she loaded this up to begin with.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the chief? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business of the department.
Old business, couple of things. I had on my notes to talk about the ongoing apparatus repairs, which was picked up through the budget reference. And so again, we expect 2 engines to arrive in May of 2024. We're close enough now, I don't expect that date to really change much more. And so as soon as they come in and we have some time, it's not an immediate turnover. There's a few weeks anyways that we're going to need, and fortunately the weather will be nice enough where we can make that changeover pretty seamlessly. The apparatus don't vary too much from what we have, so the training won't be significant, but we'll get these engines in service as soon as we possibly can, and we'll be able to relinquish the lease that we're carrying right now and open up that $3,000 a month that we're currently being charged.
Any other issues with having apparatus that are breaking down and being more problematic, or?
It's a daily struggle.
Okay.
Every day it's something different. I provided to the Board of Finance during the workshop the list showing how every day apparatus are out of service. And so, yeah, until we have some stability in the fleet, it's going to stay that way.
Okay.
And that's all I really had for old business.
New business of the department?
Nothing for new business.
Well, I think we were going to go over the ordinance. Yeah. So, so the Board of Selectmen have been discussing an ordinance that will provide a tax abatement for real property for surviving spouses of police officers and firefighters who die in the line of duty. And I was watching that discussion, and I have some concerns with the language in the ordinance that I think I wanted us to talk about. The first thing that was discussed, and it's not actually in the draft of the ordinance yet, but Sally requested that the ordinance indicate that the definition of a line of duty death for firefighters or police officers is that they're performing an action that's solely related to the performance of their regular work, and that it does not include deaths that could just have likely occurred while not on duty. And she wants a medical professional to make a determination that the cause of death couldn't have happened someplace else. And my concern with this, and I had provided everybody with this report from NIOSH, is that firefighters, because of the work they do, that they are at higher risk for having cardiovascular incidents. And I don't think there's any medical professional that's going to say this could have only happened in the line of duty. And my concern is that that this ordinance isn't going to apply to firefighters if they have a cardiovascular incident while on duty in the way it's worded right now. And I think it's important for people to know that, that according to NIOSH, firefighter fatalities due to heart attacks or sudden cardiovascular events occur more frequently because of the work that they do and the things that they're exposed to. And one of the things they specifically talk about in this article is the fact that staffing plays a role in that, because the physical activity that they're doing while they're fighting a fire is very physically taxing. The exposure that they have to smoke and other chemicals can also create cardiovascular issues that put them at higher risk. And I don't think that we should be. I don't really support this if we're going to eliminate a category of line of duty death. Because people don't understand that cardiovascular incidents are occurring because of the line of duty and not necessarily just because they could have happened someplace else. And I don't think you're going to get a medical professional who's going to go out on a limb and say, nope, this couldn't have happened any other place. So my concern is that firefighters are not going to get the benefit of this. And it's, so I kind of wanted to have a discussion about this.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention and your communications with me and the chief. prior to this meeting, I'm in agreement with you. I don't believe that, first of all, the line of duty death designation for the two firefighters who passed in our department was determined by the chief as a result of an extensive, exhausting investigation. And the way I'm reading this here, and the way you articulated this, is that the line of duty death means that death occurred while a firefighter or police officer is performing an act solely related to the performance of their regular work as part of it. Well, firefighters are in a strenuous position and working very hard. And my understanding is that a person could be exerting themselves significantly, leave the firehouse, and pass away as a result of what they went through during the time when they were on duty. I don't see where this is addressing that. The other thing is, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's some legislation that the state is working on regarding firefighters and police officers as it pertains to line of duty death definitions. Is that correct?
It is.
And my further understanding is that that state legislation, I believe, is going to read 24 hours after the last shift for the police officer or firefighter. Is that also correct?
It is. There's some state legislation that I proposed through legislators that's going to define the line of duty term, because I think it needs to be further defined. And it's going to build upon existing federal law called the Hometown Heroes Act, which basically is not what this ordinance says.
And I will tell you what's in well, this is the draft that I had gotten, that I worked off of, and then we got what was supposedly the most updated language, but I will tell you that it was proposed, and I believe the attorney accepted this, that the ordinance should not only just say that it it does not include deaths that could have just likely occurred while not on the line of duty, also said that the line of duty death determination had to occur by a medical professional, which immediately, for me, was a problem. Because, again, a medical professional is not going to say, if it happens to be a cardiovascular incident, that couldn't have happened in any other place. But, that it does relate to exposure that firefighters have had through the course of their work, plus the activity that they're doing at the time. So to me, I think it's a problem, and I think I'm personally going to get up when this comes up again, and state my concern about that language in the ordinance. If they change that language, I certainly support what's behind it, but I just want to make sure that we're not discounting, the risks that firefighters are at that are different from other professionals.
So it appears that what they're trying to accomplish is the tax abatement and tax benefit to the surviving spouse.
Correct.
So, which I appreciate. I appreciate the fact that the spouse receives a tax abatement for the personal property, the home, the car.
No, not the car,
Not the car.
Not the car, the property.
property.
For the length of time that they live in the house.
Yep.
So I certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure our firefighters and police officers would appreciate that as well. To know that, God forbid, if they pass in the line of duty, that their spouses would be able to continue to live in the house without a tax issue, no matter what the tax increases accumulate the bid. But, you know, like you, Jen, I'm not in favor of a physician making that determination, especially, you know, if you have physicians that don't know the industry. They're going to have to rely upon our chief to articulate what transpired, what the person did, and they're not going to know what their pre-existing conditions were, as we don't know.
Right.
So, I don't, this almost, you know, to me is a political, document that is, has one purpose, and the only purpose is to provide the tax abatements. Why they should come up with a definition of cause of death and include a physician in that interpretation of a cause of death, I think isn't necessary. I think there's too much involved. There's too much verbiage in here that leads to uncertainty as far as a decision is concerned. So if we have a situation where a firefighter passes and it's deemed by our chief that it was a line of duty death, I guess what they're indicating is that a physician can in fact circumvent that decision or change that decision, and then it becomes now a legal issue as to what the actual definition of
Well, I think it
line of
should,
duty death is.
well, I think based on the ordinance, it's not necessarily saying the decision gets overturned, it's just saying that the spouse doesn't qualify for the tax abatement, which I have a problem with. I think that should not disqualify them.
I absolutely agree with that, and I think every firefighter and police officer in this town would disagree with that. And not only that, but we have police officers and firefighters who live in this town and work in other municipalities who would probably disagree with that. So,
So a few things if I can,
go ahead, Chief.
because I want to speak for the police chief entirely, but we were asked if we were in support of this, and we both kind of taken a position that, we're not against it. It kind of puts us in a really bad spot to take a position either way on this. So we have not had any correspondence up until this point on the language until it was brought to my attention, but there's a few things that I'm concerned with, and one of those is whoever is going to make this decision being put in a very bad situation to have to try to tell the survivor of a firefighter's family that this is not going to be something that applies to him or her. I think that's a pretty bad situation. I've been through this now twice, and I can tell you that talking with the families and the survivors is not something that's easy to do. And now telling them that they don't meet the terms, their families don't meet the terms of this. We're talking about something that, let's hope, really never happens again. I understand that we have residents in this town who work for police and fire departments in different portions of our state, and that we can't necessarily control that. But I mean, really, we've all been in this town for some period of time. I can't think of very many firefighters and police officers that were residents of this town that died even serving in front of the community. And so this is not something that's going to happen a lot, but yet we seem to be politicizing the language with it. Mm-hmm. And listening to the comments that were made at this meeting, in which there was some conversation about the fire chief making a decision, I kind of took offense to. Something I don't think a lot of people realize in this state is that every fire department is not a municipal fire department. We have just as many fire departments in the state that are districts. And so the municipality will take no position at all on the death or the circumstances of a firefighter. Quite frankly, because the municipality has no jurisdiction at all on the district. It is a fire district. And so fire departments are going to be different. And so with that in mind, the way that this is worded right now, it specifically says a municipal firefighter. And so my question is, if we have a firefighter that lives in North Haven, that works for a district in West Haven, they're not going to be eligible for the benefit because they're not a municipal firefighter, they work for a fire district, or a Sikorsky, or a sub-base firefighter. I mean, we're putting too many variables in something that really shouldn't have that many variables put into it at all. If this is a goodwill ordinance.
Yes.
We go on to say that it needs to be determined by a physician. There's not an autopsy that requires that. I've been through one of these scenarios now where there was not an autopsy that was desired at all. And so who's making that determination? So we cannot expect that a medical provider is going to be able to provide this clarification.
Right.
Line of duty is line of duty. Simple as that. There's federal law that currently identifies it, and I'm hopefully going to be successful in pursuing some state law that's going to further define it. And that needs to stay just like that. If it's a line of duty death, it's a line of duty death. It's not up to anybody in this town to circumvent that or sidestep it or think that it doesn't pertain as what's currently happening right now. It's actually a shame. It actually goes on to say that you need to have died in the line of duty, and there's reference in here about travel to and from the place of business.
Yes.
So firefighters and police officers that work and have to report to work in blizzards, coming to work, when everybody else is staying home and they get into an accident because they're going to work, now is not going to be considered, it's going to be considered line of duty death by their department and by their insurance carrier because it's threshold to threshold, but now this isn't going to pertain. We're just writing too much into this and we're making it too difficult, and it really shouldn't be that bad.
It seems like they just want.
To control,
Yeah,
they want to control.
Say that they're only
I haven't.
covered is if they were actually doing the work.
Can't pick and choose this stuff.
So Jen, the author of this was Sally?
No. So this came to the selectmen meeting in, let's see, I would watch the February one.
2 months ago.
That, yeah. It was it was a suggestion, I think it came from the attorney and maybe from Mike, but then when they read the language of the ordinance, then there was a discussion of what to add or change over 2 months. And they're going to, at the next meeting, they have not finalized the language. So at the next meeting, they'll have a new draft with any suggestions that were made in the last meeting, and they'll be voting on it. So there'll be the opportunity to speak to items that are, to speak to the agenda. And I would assume that before they vote, there's an opportunity to get up there and say, you know, here's the problem we have. I also think there is the opportunity to write to the selectmen and say, here are all our concerns. It has to go to a town meeting, so it just, you know, the selectmen will vote on it, and then it'll go to a town meeting for the whole town to vote on. But I just felt like, and I only picked up on a couple of things. Obviously, she picked up on some things that I didn't pick up on. But I think it's a problem, the language in here, because I think it's exclusive, and there's nothing worse than to tell someone who's had a line of duty death in their family that you don't qualify for something that is meant
it's
to
shameful.
give relief.
It's absolutely shameful.
So
So
this came, Pat,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Pat.
this came about when the police chief in the town where the police officer was killed talked to Frida about doing this. That's how it started out.
So the police officer or chief from another town spoke with our first selectman?
Yes.
And our first selectman asked our town attorney to create some verbiage? Is that how this happened?
Well, it must have been.
There was
I-
state law that was passed
Yes.
recently that allows towns to adopt ordinances such as this.
Yes.
And so, yes, this has been in conversation for a long time and predates any of the fire department's losses. But now the ordinance is being proposed and there's a lot of language being added to it above and beyond.
Don't you think that these firefighters are getting into these situations in the line of duty? And even though it might happen at home, they still, you know, come across the smoke and all that other stuff while they were working.
I think that if you look at even what Commissioner Caldwell has there from the NIOSH report, there is a lot of material that covers the fact that firefighters suffer medical incidents within 24 hours of their shift if they can tie directly to their shift. If a firefighter's not feeling good and doesn't want to work anymore and decides to go home now, well, because they didn't die in the station, they're not going to, I mean, we're putting too much into this. We need to leave it as simple as if it's designated line of duty, then the benefit is there. It's really what this should be.
I mean, this report is very, I mean, it has a lot in it. It talks about exposure and the impact on the cardiovascular system. But it also talks about staffing, work conditions, the amount of physical exercise, exertion that happens, during fire suppression. And some of the recommendations have to do with making sure that the department is properly staffed to prevent cardiovascular events on duty. And I think actually there's somewhere in here, and I can't find it right now, but it talks about having at least 4 firefighters on scene. Well, our engines only have 3. So, I think that there's a lot of good information that many people I don't think recognize or realize are part of the risks of being a firefighter beyond what most people think about, which is you're going into a burning building and you could get hurt because you're in a burning building. But it's more than that. So I just think that, maybe this is worth sharing. I don't know, I let you read it, but I think it might be worth sharing with selectmen so that they understand what they're proposing.
There's registries with the police departments, police, association on a nationwide level as well as the firefighters. And you can see, fortunately, how seldom we're talking about line of duty deaths occurring in the fire service or the police service. And so now you break it down even further to how many of those members are going to be residents of North
Right.
Haven. And again, we're not talking about a lot here. This shouldn't be that big of a concern.
Yeah.
Well,
It's page 5.
I think there definitely needs to be a representation of this commission and Chief. I think if your schedule permitted for you to be at that selectman meeting to speak as an expert in this field, I think the document that you have from NIOSH there clearly indicates all of the preventative type of exercise and things that could be done and are being done to protect our firefighters. And they're doing the best that they can to stay healthy. I know as recent as last meeting, we talked about the new state recommendation of 2 sets of turnout gear because of the cancer risk. How important that is considering all of the chemicals that firefighters experience when they're in even a minor fire, no matter what it is, because of the material that's burning. It's just, I think people are ill-informed. They're not educated sufficiently to understand, what they're putting together here. I know they're more than likely trying to protect the town as far as not allocating tax abatements to persons who don't deserve it. But again, as the chief said, how do you go and talk to a spouse to say, well, your firefighter passed and just missed the time frame and you're not entitled to a tax abatement? Or using the example that you used, was in a snowstorm on the way coming to the fire station, was involved in a major accident and died. They weren't fighting a fire, but they were on the way to work. So why is that not counted?
Right.
So I would like us to have a presence at that Board of Selectmen meeting, Chief, and I'm hopeful that your schedule will permit you to be able to attend and speak on behalf of the department. And I'm pleased that you've submitted some state legislation to address clearly what the time frame is as far as line of duty death is concerned for firefighters. I don't know if it includes police officers as well in that legislation. But saying, indicating that it's a 24-hour period of time from the time that they left their shift until, God forbid, at the time that they pass, I think is a reasonable period of time for someone that has exerted themselves at a fire, left, came home, and then unfortunately passed, to still be considered a line of duty death. And I think after your exhaustive investigation of our unfortunate last line of duty death, for Lieutenant Lisa Milne, that's what the finding was. And I'm sure his wife was very appreciative of that investigation. I'm sure our firefighters were appreciative of it and the results of it. And, you know, his wife is the recipient of that tax abatement that the town absolutely deserves to provide for that surviving spouse. So, this is a disappointment to me, and
I think a lot of it is probably lack of knowledge and understanding, and I think maybe just being able to present a different, you know, a different discussion on what this language will do. And I think the chief is right. I mean, you're protecting the town from a very small, you know, the point of this is to provide relief to families of police officers and firefighters who died in the line of duty. If we're sitting and then cutting down, okay, you qualify, but you don't, then you've taken the goodwill of this ordinance and you've just turned it into something that is painful. And that to me is problematic. But I think maybe, that, you know, probably when they were talking about this ordinance, they weren't thinking of that. So I think giving them a different perspective, you know, hopefully they'll change the language, because they still have plenty of time to change the language of the ordinance. It's
You know,
not set in
it's
stone.
hard for me to understand how they didn't understand this. If you know, the chief is indicating that this language has been around for a while in other municipalities.
It hasn't.
I'm sorry?
There hasn't. I believe only one other community has passed an ordinance like this. There's state law that allowed the ordinance to be passed, but there's only, I believe, one other community that's passed the ordinance that we can reference language from.
So the attorney obviously had to research or get the copy of whatever that ordinance was and retrofitted it for North Haven.
Yeah, I think what it seemed to me that he was doing, and I don't know, Pat, I think you watched some of these meetings too, but it seemed to me at the last meeting that they were saying, you know, can we add this language? Does this make sense? I want it to be consistent. And he was just confirming, yes, that would meet,
okay.
you know, that would fall under whatever the state allowed them to do. That's fine within that definite, you know, within what the state's allowing you to do. So I don't know, again, I don't know that anybody was looking at this as a big picture, you know, thing. And so we'll see. I mean, I think if we bring it up and we express to them the concerns, hopefully they will, you know, make some changes. And I think, you know, I'm probably going to send a letter to all of them ahead of time so that they're ready at the meeting to understand, to know that there is concern about the language that's been proposed.
I appreciate you doing that, and I think if other commissioners feel comfortable in signing that letter along with you,
Yep.
I think that would be something that would be more powerful.
Okay.
Not that your signature isn't powerful.
Nope, my signature does not go I don't have very much power anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. You sign that check. Yeah, the other thing is, Chief, so once the ordinance, let's say the ordinance is passed, and the state legislation is proposed and passed, does the state legislation supersede or this ordinance?
That's a question for the attorney. I don't know.
I think so. I think any state legislation, most things, when if there's a conflict, the state legislation takes precedence.
But your legislation that you're proposing is the definition of
Line of duty.
line of duty death. It has nothing to do with abatements of tax. So, I mean, that's
True. That is
so that's
true.
what this should be addressing.
Yes.
I mean, why they're convoluting the whole thing with line of duty definition? I think it should just read, if a person has passed in the line of duty, then their surviving spouse, if they
Right.
were married to that person and living in that home, will have a tax abatement for the the lifetime that they lived in the house.
Right.
And it can't be passed on to whomever. That would be pretty simple to me.
Yes, yep.
Anyway, but again, thank you for bringing
Yep.
this to our attention. Hopefully, for the firefighters that are out there that are listening to this or will be seeing this, has an opinion on this and will come to the Board of Selectmen meeting as well. Because obviously, it's your spouses that potentially would be impacted on this. Anything else other than new business?
Nothing for new business, no.
Okay. The good of the fire department.
Two quick things. Fallen Firefighter Memorial scheduled for April 7th, which is a Sunday. You should all have that on your calendar already. We've discussed it, and there's a planning meeting, I believe, coming up this week. I know some of you weren't able to attend the last one, but please watch on your calendar. I believe there's another one this week for it. And other than that, we do have one firefighter that started the Connecticut Fire Academy recruit program last week, and anticipated graduation is going to be May 22nd, 2024, although that may change. That's all I have for good of the department.
Getting out of the academy when we get a new apparatus.
About the same time.
That'd be perfect. Anything else? Public comments?
Brian Moreno, Grove Road, Captain of the Fire Department. If I may ask permission to speak very briefly to the Commission in executive session regarding personnel.
Any objections? Very good. Any other public comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session. Any second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, February 20, 2024 North Eaton Fire Commission meeting to order. I'd like to ask Commissioner Mulligan to read a motion.
I make a motion that we carry over 11 vacation days from 2023 for Lieutenant Christopher Shea
To 2024.
to 2024.
Do I hear a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Any further business coming before this commission? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Aye.
Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.